let's have a look at some coding. We've got a couple of lessons left. We've got today, and then we've got Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. And what I want to do by the end of the term is to let you have seen everything that you need to have known to complete the project and attempt a lot of the exam questions. Now, bear in mind that you haven't even started the course yet, so you're a long way forward. These videos are there for you to use for revision next year as we go through. So when we do the project, you can go back over what I've shown you on the videos and learn how to do that, or produce the work based on that. It's going to be very, very useful for you. We've got a lot of work to do next year, so I really would like you to be prepared for it. Now, I know one or two of you are having difficulty with buffering in these videos. I've checked everything out. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about it. It seems to be probably your side on your Wi-Fi. I know when we do the theory side of the course, you will learn why and be able to change that yourself, hopefully. But that's probably down to something called a channel. There are about 14 channels like BBC One, BBC Two, BBC 14 that you can use. But if your neighbour has got the same channel as you, so if you're both on sort of BBC One, you're going to get some interference, and that's going to make your videos buffer. What you really need to do is make sure that you switch channels and go to BBC Two while they're on BBC One, and then there won't be any interference and your videos won't buffer. But that's a long way down the road, roughly this time next year, when you'll be learning how to do that. But if you ask parents or somebody with a bit of knowledge, if they can change your router, then it might be possible, and you'll get videos played at full speed. But that will also affect everything else that you do sort of on the internet. So I think that would be well worth looking at. So this lesson, really what I intend to do is finish it off so that you can make the simplest project going. So you've got all the tools you need to do a simple project. There are more complicated things to come, more complex things to come, but that's just an advanced version of your project. So if you're writing a project and you want, because remember it's not going to be marked, if you want a better version of it, and particularly for your exam, then the rest of the course a bit later on, what I teach, will be useful. But for your benefit at the moment, you will have learned everything. You will have seen the project, how it's laid out, how it's designed, about flowcharts, about pseudocode, about coding, about testing, and about refinement. You've seen it all. However, in the next two lessons, I want to sort of add on to two of the constructs that you have learned. So we've learned constructs. There are three. There's four, but I'll go into the fourth one next year. There's three that you need to be aware of. That's sequence. That's one line of code following another line of code. Then there's selection. That's an if statement. And I'm going to take you through before the end of the term. So in the next two lessons, I'm going to take you through an advanced version of that. At the moment, you've done if and else, and there's one further statement called elif that we need to build into that. And actually that changes the way that your flowchart looks. So we will look at that statement and the flowchart in either the next lesson or Wednesday's lesson. And the final thing is the loops. At the moment, you've seen a while loop, and in Python, there are two loops. The while loop is called a conditional loop, and conditional means it waits until something happens. It's based on a condition, like, oh, somebody's just come through the door. We don't know when it's going to happen. It just occurs. And the second loop, which I'm going to teach you before the end of the term, so probably Tuesday or Wednesday next week, is something called a counting loop, where we do know how many things there are. Let's say there's 10 items and it's going to do a loop for 10 times. And I'm going to show you that. And again, there is a different, there's an addition to the flowchart. It's not different. Neither the elif or the counting loop gives you a different flowchart. There's no new symbols to learn, but how you put those symbols together tells you which kind of loop you've got. And I know that's going to be difficult now, but with practice, you'll be fine with that. Now, the way I'm going to do that is by using something called string manipulation. So I want you to be really aware of what string manipulation is. There's a lot to it, and we're just going to cover the surface just enough to do some work with it in the next couple of lessons. What manipulation means is changing things. So on the screen you can see the word hello, and I've put it in speech marks because it's a string. We could change it. We could change all the letters to be completely different, or we could reverse it so it says ole. We could do a lot of work with it. That's called manipulation. But we need to see how that can be performed, and there's a very special way of doing it. And this is very important. So the lesson's going to be fairly short in what you need to do, but the knowledge that you require is going to be extensive. So you need to practice this a lot and play with this a lot. And I will give you lots of videos in the future on how to play around with these. I'll also give a version of the program in PHP in a separate video. In this video, I'll just have a look at this in Python. So here's my string, hello. So we need to know a few things about it. And one of the things that I might want to know, and that the program can tell me, is exactly how long that is. So this one is a word. The computer doesn't know what hello means. It hasn't got a clue. All it knows is that it's got some letters and that there are 5 of them. H-E-L-L-O. That's 5 letters, and we actually call them characters in computing. And we can find out using PHP or Python how long a string is. We can ask it that question. How long is this string? And it will tell us. So I've got a different string here, hello world. And this time, the length of the word is 11 characters. Now, you might say, oh, there's only 10 letters. But actually, between hello and world, there is a space, and that counts as a character. So I've got 5 letters in hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I've got 5 letters in world, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I've got a space between them. So 5 letters in hello, 5 letters in world, and a space gives me a total of 11 letters. And again, if you're programming, you have to be careful at the end or beginning of words. If you put spaces, you might not see them on the screen, but they will count. So we can type this into Python and it will tell us that hello world consists of 11 characters. Now, this is the important part. This is called indexing, and we will come back to this over time. And it's really, really simple. It just says what position in the string is that character. So here I've got my H in hello world, and I've spaced it out so I can write numbers on the top. So H is at the first position, but the first position is 0. And that's a real big thing to think about, and it's often where mistakes are made, and it is certainly a question that they will be testing you on in the exam. So we call this the first position, but we give it the number 0, and then the next character along, the E, is at position 1. It's the second position in the string, but it's number 1. So we're going to number them starting at 0 and then give each letter a number going right the way along to D by giving them numbers. So I've got L at number 2, L at number 3, O at number 4, but that is the 5th position in the string. So we have to be careful. We have to try and understand the difference between position and this number, and we call this number its index. So this is 0 index, 1 index, 2 index, 3 index, 4 index, 5 index. And I've got the 5 there because there is a space. So that character not at position 5, at index 5, it's actually at position 6, is a space. And then we continue the counting going on. So the W would be 6, the O would be 7, then 8, then 9, then 10. And the entire length of the word or the sentence was 11 characters. And if you count them, you'll find that there's 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But because it's 0 based, the first one is index 0, the last one is index 10, we've kind of like got the length is the last index plus 1. So the last index is 10, plus 1 gives us our length. Very difficult to get your head round. Don't worry too much about it at this time. What's more important is this index, and we're going to use this index to try and look at some of these individual characters. So if I made this into a sort of Python variable, so I've got text equals, and now I've got hello world, so the text equals hello world, I can look at each of these individual characters by saying what the index is. So here I've got text, which is my variable, which is hello world, and I'm saying at 0 index, the first position, 0 index, is the character H. And I can just change the number inside these square brackets, and they must be square brackets. So there's the variable text, which I set to hello world. Then I've got square brackets, and inside that square brackets I can give a number, always a number. Here I've given it 0, and it's returned the H. So if I gave it number 4, so we got text, then square brackets, index 4 is the letter O. And if I do it for 5, I get the space. And if I do it for 6, I get the capital W, and so on, all the way up to 10, where I get the lowercase d. Now, I've run out of word, okay? That's the last one in my string. So what happens if I type in a number that isn't an index, a proper index? So if I tried to do 11, the next one along, what I would end up with in my program is an error. In fact, it will say it's an index error or out of range. So that is how I sort of index the string and find out the letters. Now this is really, really useful. I know you might not think about it at the moment, but we can do an awful lot of work with this. Imagine that instead of having letters, I had a deck of cards. So I've got the ace, then the 2, then the 3, then the 4, then the 5, then 6, 7, and so on, Jack, Queen, King. They would have an index, and I could probably just pick them out just by using their index number at the top. But more of that later. That's a bit complicated for what we're doing today. All I want you to be aware of is that we can have a variable, some square brackets, and a legitimate number inside, so 10 would be fine. But if we didn't have a legitimate number, we'd end up with an error. That's as much as I really want you to know. And we'll see this in Python and again in PHP later. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at Python. So if I did my variable text equals hello world, that's good. Now remember, the majority of the times we are not typing in a fixed value. This is called a string literal because it's fixed. It's definitely there. Normally we would be asking the user to type something in, like give me a sentence, give me a word, and then we could play around with that using the indexing or the length function that we've just used. So let me first of all show you how to find out how long it is. So I'm going to use the word print because it's going to display the answer, and I'm going to use len for length. It's only 3 letters in this, and inside round brackets, I'm going to say what I want to find the length of, and I want to find the length of text. Actually, before I go there, I could actually put hello world in there. It doesn't really matter whether we've got text or hello world. So let's put hello world in there and run the program. And you should see that should come out on this side as 11 eventually. There we go. So there's 11 characters in hello world, but we wouldn't normally put the string in there. We'd put the variable. In other words, the variable means it can change, so we could have different words in there to find out the different lengths of things. So I'm running the program again, and there we go. It says it's 11. Okay, so we've done that, but now I can actually get to any of these letters themselves. So I'm going to overwrite that, and I'm going to say, well, actually, let's keep the print. Okay, so it's not liking that. So I'm going to keep the print, and I'm going to write text, because that's the variable that contains hello world. Then I'm going to use my square brackets, and then I'm going to put 0 in there. So I'm saying print whatever the text is, but only the 0th character, the H, the very first one, the index 0. So if I run my program now, that should print H out on the right hand side, capital H. There we go. And I could do the same with the E. So that's at position 1, the index 1. So if I run that now, that should give me E. Been a bit slow today. So there's my E. And remember, we did position 4, which was the O. So let's do that. Position 4, run it. We should get O. There we go. Position 5 or index 5 was a space. So you shouldn't see anything appear on the screen. It should be a space. There we go. And index 6 was W. Brilliant. And index 10 was the D. So if you remember back to the presentation that I was giving, index 10 was D. And if we went beyond, so that's our last letter in our string, if I tried to do one more, the 11th one, or a bigger number, then I should end up getting an error, and the error is an index error. Okay, so the number is incorrect, that's what it's trying to say. And it's saying that the string, so we've got a string here, the index, the number, is out of range. It's beyond what it knows. So that is looking at Python. We can work out the length of a string by using len. We can use the square brackets and an index number to find any letter in the string. So that's useful for us, and we're going to use it in a couple of programs over the next couple of lessons. So I want you to be aware of what's happening. I'll give you some exercises to play around with, not many questions. I just want you to understand what is happening there, and then we can move on. So on to the exercises.